we're calling it Women's Voices in Tourism, because voices must be heard. And we want to make sure that more and more women's voices are. And we have a variety of topics. This is a 3-part series. This is just the first in 3 parts. There will be another one with the final one in May. And these first 2 are talking about issues, some problems. And the third one, so you'll have to be sure to tune in, is about some of the solutions. I'm Zelia Breda, and I'm the moderator for today's session. We have 6 fabulous female speakers. There's no testosterone in this particular one, but there will be some male comments in some of the subsequent series in this particular seminar. I was invited by Reza Soltani, who I met through an International Institute of Peace through Tourism event, IIPT. Many of us here are familiar with it and have met through it. It is the brainchild of the founder and president, Louis D'Amour. He founded it in the 1970s. And there are so many good things underneath the umbrella of Peace Through Tourism. It's all about environmental protection, about raising people up from poverty, and of course, women and empowering women. Because if you empower women, you empower whole communities and then the world. So this is a very important session. We have people watching on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course, it's on tourismwebinar.com. It's being recorded, and you can watch this anytime you want, forever. It's going to be in the cloud. And not only this seminar, but all the rest, and others that came before this one. So if you scroll down and look around on tourismwebinar.com, you're going to see a lot of the different sessions and the speaker profiles. So you can have a look at all of the incredible background that went behind all of the experiences that people are going to be communicating today. Now, they only get a 15-minute platform roughly, but I think that we can all encapsulate what we do in that time. So I am a travel journalist, and I've been producing travel television shows. I almost hate to say how long, but since 1987, my first show, Discover Your World. And that turned into Passport to Adventure and Timeless Places. And I was making corporate videos for all sorts of countries at that time. And now I have a TV series called Out of Town Adventures, which is, we're filming in season 4, and 3 seasons are up on Amazon Prime in English-speaking countries. And I don't let them be available on YouTube because otherwise they wouldn't license. But if anyone's interested, I would certainly send a link where you could watch some of the episodes. But through this, it's not just going and reporting about hotels and food. It's about feeling a real connection with people. And I think women, I gotta say, women do that best, right? So we like to get into the community and find out what's going on. We're interested in the crafts and things that have created a place and brought it forward through history. I got interested in all the religions of the world, all of the spiritual thinking patterns of everyone absolutely fascinates me. And I think one thing we've all discovered in Peace Through Tourism is that our common ground is absolutely massive. We have so much more in common with each other than we have against each other. So I like to find that common ground. And I may be showing a beach or a museum, but it's all about helping people desensitize them to the fear of others. So I got involved with the International Institute of Peace Through Tourism because I loved the work they were doing. So that's where I'm at. I like to do what I'm doing with the travel shows, but my underwriting principle is being responsible for compassionate reporting that helps people understand the different cultures of the world. And I just love doing that. So without much further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Now, all of our speakers, as I say, have an enormous tapestry of background with what they're going to express. Dr. Zelia Breda is one of our academics. So she's one of the ones who is extremely educated in tourism and gender tourism and tourism marketing. So she has a lot to say about where women's place is in this whole role. So I would like to introduce you to Zelia Breda.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your introduction, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon for all of you. Here it's good afternoon. I just had lunch. We are all in different time zones, and I thank very much the organizers for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really honored to be part of this fantastic group of women that are speaking today, very distinguished speakers. So it's really a pleasure. I'm just going to present myself a little bit of my background. I have background in tourism studies since the bachelor degree. I did the PhD also in tourism studies. I had an experience in doing research in Asia, in China and India, where I traveled. I went to India alone to do research. I didn't know anything. I did some travel there. So I also have a little bit of experiencing of solo traveling, but I'm not talking about this today. We have different people here in this panel to present their experience and also the background they have in working with solo travelers. But when I finished the PhD, I started teaching at University of Aveiro, where I'm working still. And we decided to go for a project on gender studies. This is what it was my first contact with this area of gender studies, because most of our students are female and they get the best marks where when they go for the PhD, they also get the scholarships. So they are performing much better than the male counterparts. So we wonder where all these females are going, because when we see the companies in terms of leadership, they're mostly occupied by men. So we have very knowledgeable students, female students, and then they disappear in the labor market. So basically we started doing this, project. We mostly target students. We also were aiming to understand their expectations and seeing the difference between the female students and male students. And really the male students were more eager to reach these leadership positions. They were more motivated. And it was really interesting because we also looked into the graduates, not only students, but the graduates. And in the graduate situation, we really saw in the Portuguese context what the literature was saying, that we really have a very high gender pay gap. There's a glass ceiling because in the top level positions, we mostly see men. So we decided to go for a second project, and we got finance for that, for the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology. And we decided to go for the labor market. And we did a study in all Portuguese regions, not only quantitative, but also qualitative study, doing some focus groups with different stakeholders. And it was really interesting to see the results. We got results a little bit different from region to region, but overall, all of them was mentioning this difficulty of women to reach these positions, and also the work-life balance. We know that is very, very difficult sometimes to manage because women has this very important role at home, especially in this context in the Latin countries, where the masculinity is still very strong. So basically, this was my first attempt on gender studies. Now I'm doing another project, is implementing gender equality plan at universities. So we're looking more on the higher education institutions, not only in terms of teaching, but also the research. And it's a similar scenario. So mostly the full professors are male, and the directors of departments and faculties, rectors, and so on, mostly they are male dominated positions. So what we see, it's that women are really important. We know that they have a very important role in economic development. And now we are in this situation, pandemic situation, and never before there's been such an opportunity for the industry to reframe and balance the economic development with the sustainability, especially reinforcing its social impact on citizens and local communities. But if the travel industry is has this intention on rebuilding from the ground up, so we have a lot of countries that are still being locked down, and we really need to look forward to the situation and better the situation. Then we must reconstruct it with women. Who, despite being a majority of travelers, we see these that they are very important as from the demand side, but also they comprise a big share in the tourism workforce. And that's the importance of women, not only as travelers, but also within the workforce. And what we also learned from these projects is that I mentioned already the leadership positions that are, mostly they are in the middle positions where there's a lot of work, but they don't reach up these top level positions. But also when looking into entrepreneurship, some women are really eager to have their own business, and they are in some countries, in some communities, also gaining a position. But mostly the entrepreneurship that we see in our studies and also in literature is women are mostly entrepreneurs by necessity, not for opportunity. Usually they are less eager or to take risks, mostly also looking at the position that they occupy at home. So they are also worried about the situation, the children and so on, and also to balance work with life. But entrepreneurship in some contexts is very important to empower women, especially in some communities. They can gain extra money and to have their own control of time, and also make it more or make it easier to balance the life and the family life and also the work conditions. When talking about innovation, and women can have a really interesting position in this issue, because now we are facing a crisis. It's the pandemic, but also it is leading to economic crisis. And it's widely acknowledged that innovation fuels economic development and also competitiveness of the destinations. So a lot of studies recommends higher inclusion of women in economic as a source of growth. And this, of course, attracted also the interest of a lot of researchers on the topic of gender related to innovation in the business context. However, the concept of innovation is gender neutral. It does not consider gender, but there's a lot of studies that address business sectors in which women are underrepresented. We know there also horizontal segregation. We know there's some subsectors where there's mostly women working, but also subsectors that they are underrepresented and are traditionally male dominated. And usually they're more linked with technology-based firms or linked with the STEAM. We also know in the education sector, there's also segregation. Women usually go for more social sciences, and men go for mathematics and technology and so on. So when we measure innovation, when we talking about innovation, and it's measured by patents or protection of registered designs and so on. So basically male dominate because they also mostly represented in these sectors and more in technologies, technological businesses. So and also the image of women is not so compatibly of being an innovator or a leader. So usually when you think about a leader or linked with innovation, usually it's a male representation when we think about. And also the definition of innovation is focused on results rather than on the process leading to this innovation. And we know that in the process of innovation, which excludes individuals, and we know that women can also have a very important role on that. And also not only women, but also the diversity in some teams, whereas a lot of teams with only one gender, sometimes it doesn't lead to different ideas. So diversity is very important. So what happens is that gender becomes diluted. The issue of gender is rarely taken into account when studying innovation dynamics. And it's very important also. There's a lot of studies on leadership and entrepreneurship and take into account the gender issue, but innovation is also very important. Although, as I mentioned, a lot of researchers already are taking gender into account when doing research, but still it's not very, it's not a topic very studied yet. So in this case, women becomes invisible and are often considered to be non-innovative, or at least not so innovative as men. So this has some negative consequences on women's access to top management positions and also to innovation resources, and brings also women's innovative potential. So they don't have access to it, less resources. So it's like a circle, a vicious circle. And of course, men-owned businesses continue to attract resources more than women-owned businesses, which of course has a clear negative impact on these firms and also on their performance. So we can, of course, see different levels of innovations. There's gaps on research and also emerging issues on relating gender and tourism and innovation. As I mentioned, there's a lot of research on gender studies related on tourism, especially in recent years. But this issue of innovation in the hospital industry is still not so developed yet. We also know that the tourism sector has some characteristics and also dynamics that is, of course, have to be taken into account. It's a services, but there's distinct features that it's necessary to take into account, and also how to study this, what models, which models can we also look at in. And recently, there's some regional innovation systems that are taken into account for doing the studies on innovation and taking, of course, these all stakeholders into account. And the gender issue, the diversity is very important in this context of innovation and also in these regional innovation systems. So taking also a little bit into account the Portuguese context, which is not very different, not so different with other contexts in Europe and also other countries in the world. We know that employment rate is higher in men, and also, as I mentioned before, top managed positions are occupied by them, and also they occupy or represent higher share of self-employed workers. However, in services and especially in tourism, women really have a very important role in the economy. We have in the Portuguese case more or less half of employed women and men in the hospital industry, considering accommodation and also restaurants and similar establishments. But as I mentioned before, there's a high gender pay gap in tourism, so men earn much more than women. Also, top level positions are occupied mostly by men. So in some studies that were conducted linking innovation in tourism, we can see that although men usually a more role in different types of innovation, for instance, mostly on, or they mostly have a role in different types of innovation. Women are more represented in the innovation related to product in marketing. They usually develop more innovations than men. So this diversity in teams, it's very important to increase this kind of innovation in different aspects of companies in order to increase their competitiveness. Especially now, it's very important to think how to solve the problems caused by the pandemic. Companies are really struggling, and it's necessary to think about ways of not just closing the companies or thinking about other solutions of selling the products. So mostly my talk, I don't know how is my time. Bia.
Wrapping up in the next minute.
Sorry?
I think if you could wrap up in the next minute, that's great.
Yeah, I will do that. So basically, what I was trying to tell in this talk is women have a very important role in the tourism sector as travelers, as we are going to see in the next presentations, but also in the workforce, and especially now in this context. Women can really have an important role, but we still struggle with a lot of difficulties, as I mentioned. But we, in some studies that I participated with, and also in the literature, the role of women in innovation is very important. So it's very relevant to have this diversity in teams, and also to have representation in the top level positions, although there's a lot of challenges, as I mentioned. So they're not considered to be innovative or having this leader role. And this, of course, hinders their potential in the tourism sector. But right now is the right time to empower women, give them the right to also lead the way for the tourism sector. And I stop here, and of course, I'm open to questions if you want to. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I think it's always been a moving target, hasn't it? But I also think that, as you pointed out, this is a completely different seminar than would have been held a year ago or 2 years ago, because we've got the pandemic. We do have post-pandemic recovery to think about. We've got the Me Too movement, which has completely changed. That people can be exposed for some of their foibles, and also the exposure of hate is something that I think is definitely changing things, and I think we could probably all address that. Our next speaker is Carol Paragudov, who has been traveling on her own for a long time. She's a great writer. She's a funny writer. She likes to put a little humor in to her adventures, and she does have adventures, and it's fun to see how she writes about getting past it all. She's written in the Toronto Star, the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and she's got some award-winning essays. And so with no further ado there, I give the floor to Carol Paragudov, who is of Toronto, Canada.
Thank you. Thank you. I have traveled with Bea in Egypt, and where else have we gone? The Seychelles, of course. So we have shared some adventures. I'm going to talk about solo travel, particularly female solo travel, and just offer some inspiration, I hope. Because there's something empowering about solo travel, especially for a female. You can just look at some popular books like Elizabeth Gilbert's Eat, Pray, Love or Cheryl Strayed's Wild to see how life-changing it can be. Because for many women, traveling solo has practically become a rite of passage. And I'm going to touch on some reasons why and offer some tips on how to go about it and how to promote it if you're in the tourism industry. So first, I'll tell you a bit about who I am. My name is Carol Paragudov, and I founded the travel website wanderingcarol.com in 2009. I'm based in Toronto, and I grew up in the Canadian prairies, dreaming about seeing the rest of the world. I did a master's of visual art in Canada, then my master's in business in Seoul, Korea. My thesis was on tourism and marketing, and my research focused on how individual countries have unique personalities and how this can affect the travel preferences of their citizens. I think this is in flux with diversity, but it was definitely an interesting study. I'm a huge fan of traveling solo. In fact, I based a good part of my career on it. And for years, I wrote a freelance column on solo travel for the Toronto Star, which is Canada's biggest newspaper. But that was in my other life before I was married. And I like to tell my husband that he ruined my career. But you can't keep a solo traveler down. And the day we booked a venue for our wedding is the day I took off to Thailand for 6 weeks on my own. I think I did this to prove to myself that I really wasn't giving up this important part of my life. And I still venture off on my own regularly. Why? Because it's exciting and it's challenging, and ultimately it can be one of the most rewarding ways to travel of all. So what is so rewarding about it? It offers spontaneity. When you're on your own, you answer to no one and you can change your travel plans on a whim. It's liberating. And I do have to admit, I've taken this whole spur of the moment idea to the extreme. And I once landed up at the train station in Budapest without having decided if I'd go to Prague or Salzburg. And in the end, I went to Vienna. You can't make these flash decisions if you're traveling with someone else, at least not as easily. And another benefit of solo travel is that you can be yourself. You don't have to get on board with anyone else's travel style. What if your travel companion is a night owl and you're a morning person? What if you like small towns and they like urban glamour? Traveling alone means you can sleep in if you want, or get up at 5 a.m. and sightsee for 14 hours straight. And this sends a message to your core that you're in control of your life. And there are so many things we're not in control of. So I think it really helps us feel good about ourselves. Solo travelers have no responsibility to anyone except themselves and to the place they're traveling in. I do want to stress that if you're fortunate enough to be able to travel, you're in a position of privilege, and you need to be mindful of this and to always be respectful of the environment you are in, wherever that may be. And of course, traveling alone does come with some downsides. It can start all golden in your dreams, but reality often sets in once you arrive in a new destination without a clue of what to do or how to get there. And this is especially true if you arrive after a long flight or train ride and it's 2 a.m. and you're bone tired. So what do you do if you're overwhelmed? You focus on what is in front of you. If you've landed somewhere without a hotel, book something on the internet or at the train station or the airport. You get a map from the tourist office, ask for advice on how to get to your destination. And things usually look better in the morning, and then it feels all liberating again. Now, if someone is really nervous about arriving in an unfamiliar country, it might be a good time to splurge on something like an airport pickup. And this very understandable fear of traveling alone is where travel agents and tourism boards can step in and play a part in helping women feel safe by offering advice on safer areas to stay in, or listing hotels that maybe have women's only floors, or providing contact info on trusted transportation services like taxis. I do find, as a solo traveler, if you're going to hit the top end of your budget, it's probably a good idea to do it at the beginning of a trip when you might need a little more of a security blanket. Because once you've acclimatized to your destination or your new surroundings, you'd be amazed at how low your standards can go and still leave you feeling comfortable. And I do know that the more expensive the hotel, the less likely you are to meet people. So it's good to take it down a notch as long as you feel comfortable doing it. I know I said spontaneity is something to embrace when you travel, but if you're feeling timid, pre-planning is key. And it's not just about booking hotels and excursions. I think this is something that travel and tourism companies that have comprehensive websites should take advantage of and expand the information they offer. For example, when I'm going somewhere, I like to research the lives of famous women who lived there and then visit the sites associated with them. There's hardly any information on subjects like that out there. I've written articles on following the footsteps of Anne Boleyn in England, the Empress Sissi in Vienna, and more obscure figures like Bess of Hardwick in Northern England. And this is a way of viewing history through a female lens. And it feels to me, when I'm tracing their footsteps, it's almost like a secret passage into this hidden female, feminine part of history. And I think travel and tourism sites can even expand on this and have other resources on their websites that are targeted towards women, like a list of novels written by women that are set in that locale. Things like this helps a person connect with a destination. And this really resonates when you're on your own. Now, here's another reason solo travel can be rewarding, because a solo traveler is never alone. This might sound strange, but hear me out. When I'm on my own, I feel like I'm dating a place. I'm much more aware of my surroundings than when I'm with somebody. Because when you have a travel companion, it's so easy to get distracted by your conversations or your inside travel jokes or even your arguments, and maybe especially your arguments, which is another good reason to travel alone. When you're by yourself, your focus is on where you are rather than who you're with. And it's just you and your destination, and you're so much more present in your environment. And this is a good thing, not just for the joy of celebrating where you are, but because it makes you safer. And here's the funny thing. I've had my purse stolen so many times in London, in Seoul, even in Toronto. It's never happened when I've been alone. It's always because I'm with someone and not paying attention. Though I will say, in my defense, the last time someone tried to pickpocket me, I was with friends in Piccadilly Circus in London, and I caught the thief with his hand in my bag. Just a note to travelers, if someone bumps you, it can be done on purpose as a distraction while someone else tries to steal your things. So if you feel a nudge, look at your handbag. Now, clearly safety is one of the biggest issues a solo traveler faces. So if you're thinking of traveling alone, don't let your guard down because you feel free and you're on holiday. And I think that people in the tourism industry could also provide tips for women visiting their destinations who are going alone. And some tips are universal. Keep an eye on your valuables, be careful where you venture, especially at night, watch how much you drink, try to look confident even if you don't feel it, and act like you know where you're going even if you don't. It's really the same way we'd act at home. You just need to use common sense. Another great thing about solo travel is that you learn self-reliance. I'm not sure that anything has shaped me over the years as much as traveling alone. When there's no one else to rely on, you learn to rely on yourself. And every time you have a small triumph, such as successfully navigating the subway in St. Petersburg, Russia, no easy feat, or having a meal at the opulent Le Cirque in Vegas by yourself, which is a very easy feat, you build up your self-confidence inch by inch, and that adds up to a more powerful you. At the same time, you learn to lean on others. One of the most marvelous things about solo travel is that hopefully you learn the world is a kind place. I can't count the number of times I've been helped out by strangers. When I accidentally stabbed my hand while trying to open a stuck clasp on a bottle of water in Korea, I didn't know what to do. I hadn't been in Seoul that long. I didn't know where a hospital was. I didn't even know how to say hospital in Korean. And I suspected I'd hurt myself pretty badly. So I cradled my bleeding hand in paper towels. I left my apartment and walked up to the alley to the tourist street of Itaewon, because I knew that the street vendors would take care of me, even though they didn't know me. And they did. They flagged down a taxi, they told the driver where to take me, and he didn't even want to take money for the ride. The doctors and nurses at the hospital were amazing, and it was a lesson about cross-border trust and kindness I won't soon forget. Now, while many people list loneliness as being one of their biggest fears about traveling alone, I look at it as opportunity. Just think of all those people around the world waiting to be your friend. That said, use caution. Don't go off with a stranger. Unfortunately, it's sometimes unavoidable. once I thought I'd be adventurous, and I signed up for a night tour of Central Park, and it was a stormy night. And when I got to the meeting spot at the YMCA, I discovered I was the only person on the tour other than the guide, who was a male. And so there I am wandering through Central Park with this stranger in the dark. I think I was more scared of muggers than of him. And it's not a tour I'd repeat. But to minimize the risk, I did make him leave his name and a copy of his ID with the receptionist at the Y. I said, I don't know this man. Like, take it, just record it in case I disappear. So how do you meet people when you travel? There's so many ways. Traveling solo forces you to step out of your comfort zone. Talk to the person beside you on the train, in the breakfast room at your hotel. Youth hostels are great places to meet people, though it's not my preferred way of travel, more at the luxury end if I can swing it. Often meeting people happens by chance and because you're more open to it than you might be at home. If it doesn't work, you can turn to technology. Tourlina, Tourlina, it bills itself as the female travel buddy. It's a female travel app that helps women connect with other female travelers and with local females as well. And no, it's not a dating site. That's a whole other kettle of fish. My favorite way of meeting people is by signing up for a day tour. You still get your solo trip and your time alone, but it gives you a nice break from solitude and you're bound to find someone to talk to. A bonus, there's a good chance you'll meet people that share your interests. For people who want something more extensive, there's G Adventures, who they do tours all over the world. They'll provide you with a same-sex roommate if you want, so that you can avoid paying a single supplement. Again, I like my privacy too much to do that, but for some people it's ideal. And I think Ronnie, one of the other speakers, offers tours specifically designed for women. Another really important word of advice for solo travelers is to take care of yourself. It's too easy to skip balanced meals to save time or skimp on sleep. But if you don't have your health, your trip is not going to be much fun. And trust me, after I got sick with infected spider bites in Paris, I know. Although on the upside, I became friends with my doctor. Another chance to meet people. But make sure you get travel and medical insurance before you go. This is especially vital now in this crazy world. Treat yourself like you would treat a treasured friend, because honestly, you are your own best friend, especially if you're on your own. You're your only friend. And finally, what will you gain from solo travel? I believe you gain a sense of self. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or a nervous beginner, you'll find solo travel has good points and bad points. But personally, I wouldn't give it up for the world, because the world, or at least a taste of it, is what you stand to gain. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. It seems to me like some of this would have to do with the person's personality, wouldn't it? As to how adventurous they can be. Wouldn't you say? You're pretty outgoing.
I'm actually an introvert, but I do have moments when I can talk to people, and I think solo travel is going to indulge both of these sides, but the more experienced you are, the more used to talking to strangers you become. And you can always temper it by, if you're very nervous, sign up for tours. If you're more adventurous, go off on your own. So there's something for everybody in that box of solo travel.
That's true. It sounds like you're an ideal traveling customer to a tourist board or a wholesaler. Thanks so much. So our next speaker comes from a place I had the pleasure of visiting about 1.5 years ago, and that's Cochin in India, in Kerala, which is a gorgeous place. Very vibrant and healthy and spiritual. So Ronnie Buccanee has a tour company there. She's the first and only female president of the SCAL in Kerala, which is incredible. And she's definitely an advocate for women in tourism. So I give the floor now to Ronnie Buccanee. Ronnie, can you unmute yourself? I've seen you there.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to greet everyone with a namaste, which is our traditional way of greeting in India, and which has now become very popular all over the world. during this pandemic time because it is the safest way to greet people because there's no physical contact. So our namaste is very much in fashion all over the world now. Well, I want to cover 3 different topics in the 15 minutes that's allotted to me. One is the travel profession in India. And second is women travel groups, very different from what Carol has just now told us of solo travel. These are all women who like to travel in groups. And the third is for travel into India for foreign women who many of them are very scared and they feel that India is very unsafe for women travelers. So these are the 3 topics that I want to cover. Now, to begin with, in India, there are more and more women in the travel field, and women are the preferred employees in any travel field, whether it's hotels or restaurants, travel agencies, airlines, because women are more loyal. They don't switch jobs easily, and they take their jobs more seriously. However, like Celia has said earlier, very few women reach the top positions. The top positions in India are all male dominated. So unless you are your own entrepreneur and you have your own hotel or tour company or travel insurance company or whatever, to reach to the top is very difficult in India yet. And regarding, parity in wages and sexual harassment at work, those things are getting better in the sense that now in India we have extremely strict laws against women sexual harassment at work. So thankfully, the bosses or the men in the working environment are very nervous about what the consequences. So luckily, women can work more comfortably, and men in India are also accepting that women can work shoulder to shoulder, and they don't look at them as sex objects anymore. And the young millennials, now India, we are blessed with a huge young population, and they are all educated. They have so much of zest in them, and they want to see the world, and they are go-getters. So now you look at any airlines in India also, 90% of the cabin crew, including the cockpit crew, are now women. There are women cabin attendants, very few male attendants. And India has the distinction of having solo flights where it's all women crew. After first flight of our national carrier Air India to San Francisco, from India, 17 hours non-stop flight was all women crew. The cabin crew, the cockpit crew were all women. So this is a great improvement in India that so many women are in the tourism field. And a few fields that women are still not seen so much are like tour guides. Like I've been in the tourism field now for 26 years. And whenever I travel, I always ask my travel counterpart in whichever country, I prefer a female guide because by experience, I find the female guides are so much more knowledgeable, they're more sincere, and they give you so much more information. But in India, for some reason, women do not take up that profession yet. Maybe because they're still scared to go out on their own. And secondly, the women here, the parents have a great say in the career that a young girl chooses. And the parents are not comfortable. They are okay as long as she's working in a group in an airline, in a hotel, in a travel agency, in a cruise liner, but not when you're a tour guide, you're on your own. So the parents don't feel very comfortable about that. So that is the reason why a lot of women don't go into that particular aspect. And also as tour leaders. Now, women, most of the group tours that are arranged in India, people always, it's accompanied by a local Indian tour leader. And most of the time, it's always a male that accompanies them. For some reason, women don't go. Ours is the only, one of the few companies in India where all our tour leaders are all women. Even if it's a mixed group, or women only, all our tour leaders are women. And I think we have so many repeat customers. It's only because we have women tour leaders, because they understand the passengers, the clients so much better, and they make sure that they are comfortable, and they really take care of them, hold their hand throughout the trip, which is very comforting. So I am very happy that so many women are getting into this tourism field. More than when I joined an airline in the 70s, not many women, especially I'm from a small town, like Kerala is considered as, now of course it's bigger, but those days nobody had even heard of this place. I come from Cochin, and I was one of the first girls, I think, from Kerala to join an airline as a stewardess. My parents almost disowned me. They didn't speak to me for many months, and I had to really work on them to accept me back into the family. So it was very tough, but my desire was so much there to see the world. And those days, travel in the 70s was very difficult. So the best way to see the world was to become a stewardess. And I feel those were the best years of my life, because for me, a girl from a small town with limited exposure, it was an eye-opener for me. The whole world, working with so many different people, meeting so many nationalities. And we have so many fears about, people. We judge people by their skins. Oh, a white man, it's like this. A dark-skinned man is like this. A yellow-skinned man. But then when you travel, you realize that finally we are all human beings, and we all want the same things in life. And we all look for companionship, friendship, to have a good time. So now girls are opting for this airline jobs, for working in cruise liners. And all these jobs were a total taboo in the earlier days. So this is a big, big move in India now. And the young population in India is going to do very well in the tourism and travel and tourism field. And India now, with the pandemic, everything has slowed down. Things have, 2020 was a total washout. But we in the travel and tourism field in India are very hopeful that we are going to come back with a bang, maybe by 2022 or even 2023. Because now we have used this time. Otherwise, everybody in India wants to go out of India. But now we are discovering India, the beauty of India. There's so much to see in India. And India is so diverse. And I have already done so many tours within India. And people are so happy to travel within India that, and I'm sure we will have a lot of young people who will now get into the travel field. And, that way they will benefit so much, because they learn the different cultures and all this mistrust of and judging people by the color of their skin, all that. And there will be peace and happiness in this world when we understand each other better. So this is one of the reasons now my agency, Vice Regal Travels, which I started 26 years ago. Initially we were basically doing tickets and travel into India. Then we were doing so many family groups. And every time when the ladies came back after a family trip, I used to ask them, how was your trip? Did you enjoy yourself? And the men and the children always said, oh, we had a great time. But the women always said, oh, it was okay. I'm so tired. Because I was, always like waking them up and, making sure they are reaching in time for breakfast. And then she never gets to do what she likes to do. So that's when I said I must form a group where women can travel on their own with other like-minded women. So I started this group called WE, Women Explorers. So our first trip was to China. And, we had so many women who signed up and all senior citizens. And they had such a wonderful time. And they said, and they were all from affluent families who traveled a lot. But they said, we've never enjoyed ourselves so much before. And the freedom to just look after yourself and not to have to bother about anyone. So then we asked women to enroll in our organization. And even if somebody said that, oh, but I don't have a roommate. So we would match people. So, we would find out what are their tastes, their age group, their sleeping habits, how finicky they are. And so we put people together as roommates so that they would be compatible and not fight with each other on the tour. So now we have made the biggest achievement is not just the tour and people coming on our tours. So many women have made such great friendships. They have opened up. They have become so confident. They are now, when they want to do, we encourage women to do ventures which they're good at, whether some of them are artists, some of them are fantastic at food. And so we have such a big database. Then we are all members of B. So whatever you want to have an exhibition, you want to have a show, you have a ready client there who are willing to come and promote you. So that is and then with the tour over, the friendships continue. People keep in touch. When they visit each city in India, we have women from different cities in India who come on our tour. And we have people from the US, from UK, from Canada, who come and join our tour. And they've all become great buddies now, because for each travel group, we have a WhatsApp group that is formed. Initially, it is to communicate important messages. But now, after that, they continue. And, we did a South America trip, I don't know, almost 7 years back. That group is still going strong. They're still always in touch with each other. So this is a great empowerment for women. And many of the women now prefer to travel in the V group rather than go with their spouses. So I get a lot of bad vibes from their spouses. They say that, what have you done? Our wives don't want to travel with us anymore. So, sometimes we take what we call, then they said, you have to organize a group for us called Men Explorers. So I said, that would be very boring. So we would allow you to join some of our groups. And the men who come on our groups, now they are much better. They realize that they must do what their wives like to do also. Because women, I find culturally, they like to go to the theater, to see a ballet, to, go shopping in the farmer's market. and do all those things that are so typical of a particular country that you're visiting. Whereas men want to do the least sightseeing. Most of them are allergic, at least Indian men, to museums and and they say, oh, so boring. You see one painting, you've seen it all. So now I find that the men who join our tour also are getting better. They are appreciating the good things in life, besides just in the evening going to a bar and having a few drinks. So it's working so well for everyone. And lastly, about women traveling into India. There are a lot of stories about how unsafe it is, and women should never travel, especially solo travelers. But I don't fully agree with that, because women, you have to, like any country, you have to know the rules of the country. In India, like each state is different, and if you're going into rural India, you have to be careful. And I always say, don't try and save, no Lonely Planet or Google can guide you like a local agent can guide you. So spend that little extra money and take the advice of a local travel consultant, because you will be so much more comfortable, and they will guide you and help you throughout your tour. Because it's very important in India. You know, we never ever switch off. Anybody in the travel industry, you can call them 24/7. The only time I don't answer my mobile is when I'm in church on Sunday for that 1 hour. The minute I come out of the church, I check my mobile to see if there is any message. So we look after our clients like that, especially if they are coming from other countries, because we want them to go back with a good impression of India, because word of mouth is the biggest advertisement. And so because of that, we have, our agency has got so many repeat clients from France, from Germany, and they feel so comfortable. They don't feel threatened when they come to India.
Oh, sounds so hopeful. So here's to women explorers everywhere. I love to hear that. And I know that a lot of it is a cultural evolution, some of these changes. And I have a lot of Indian friends in Canada. And even in the 20 years or so I've known them, things are changing. So it's nice to see that. I found Kerala very, very safe. But I was in a group of 5 women, and we now call ourselves the Sari Sisters. We got saris on the first day, and one of the Sari Sisters is speaking a little later. But I'd just like to say thank you, Rani. We have 3 more speakers, and our next one is Sandy Doivetter, and she is to travel what J-Lo is to music. She is a triple threat, and everything she touches turns to gold. And I got to know her back in her days with Travel Talk Radio. Always the most popular, the most award-winning. She is now expressing her wish for peace through tourism, through music. But one interesting thing that has caught her attention, and she's become a specialist on, is human trafficking, which is one of the dark, ugly sides of tourism that needs to be addressed. So I'm going to now turn the floor over to Sandy Doivetter to tell us a little more about that and what we can be aware of. Sandy. Sandy, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here, and I apologize. I was so enthralled with the presentations, I kept my mute button on obediently, and then I forgot to undo it. But thank you, Bea, and it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for the introduction.
You're welcome.
I want to share a presentation with you all, so I'm going to share a screen, and let's just start with that. So I'm going to share the screen, and let's just, so the host, okay, so Reza will just have to help me share my screen, and then I can go in. Yeah, oh, pretty soon, hopefully, we'll be able to do that. I just want to share the screen. Oh, yeah. Reza, can you help me disable? Can you disable or enable, I should say? And then I will be able to share my screen. I'm going to give you a background, a short background on my career. It's not over, but I've had a wonderful career so far. And then talk a little bit about my volunteerism. You know, I always believe that it's very important to volunteer. And I have made that a kind of a staple of my life. I know this might sound a little greedy, but I have always felt that the more you give, the more you get. And I have lived that life where it is really felt that way. I'm going to see if I can, good, I'm doing it now. All right, let's go in. And let's see if I can bring it up here. All right. Sorry about that. I thought it was all set, but here we go now. Hopefully you can see this. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
So, all right, you can see it. Great. So what I want to talk to you about, of course, is human traffic awareness and how we as women and people of our beautiful world can come together and be more aware of this, this tragedy that continues to go. I started as a young art teacher in East LA. I wanted to be an artist. More than anything, as I realized that teaching was beautiful and great, but there was more in there for me. I moved to San Francisco. George Lucas saw my portfolio. I started working on Star Wars at a young age in my 20s, and that just kicked off my career. And from there, I was very blessed to start a multimedia company, get in on computer graphics at the very, very early stages before Apple had any kinds of software. And because of being in Silicon Valley, I had the opportunity to be kind of aware and ready for, you know, prepared for when the internet came. And if you remember in 1993 in October, it was very important to me, .com became available. And I realized that the commercial a portion of the internet has now, the doors were kicked wide open. So I registered many domain names: tourist, travel, sightseeing, groceries, banking, swimming. I had an array of them. I then took my company public. And from that point, I was able to really just sit back for a moment and say, where am I going? I had been a guest on many, many radio shows talking about travel and business. And because of that, I had the opportunity to start an online radio show, and I called it Travel Talk Radio. And from there, it moved to real radio, I guess you might want to call it, and then into television with CNN and NBC in Los Angeles and San Diego. So from there, I had to make a decision. What was I trying to do in Travel Talk Radio? For me, it was like I got to think outside the box. I got to think about not only survival, which wasn't as important to me then because I was already able to continue my survival with what I had built. So I looked at how could I build bridges? How could we extend our hands in friendship? How could we protect our environment? And how could we celebrate the diversity? And that's when I learned of Louis D'Amour and the International Institute for Peace through Tourism. And I became very active in that. And he was on my program very often. So from one thing to another, I was always very interested in the esoteric part of travel. How was it really, how was it affecting us economically, psychologically, and those kinds of things. So from that point, I had some incredible guests on my show, and I was able to grow that into syndicated on Sirius and those kinds of radio stations throughout the world. So I was very, very fortunate. As I then became entrenched in that, I met this woman who was a flight attendant, and she had started this nonprofit organization called Airline Ambassadors. And from there, we started on a journey. So I'm going to go in and just tell you a little bit about, first of all, this character that I developed for Star Wars. His name is Boba Fett. He is probably the biggest, baddest bounty hunter in the galaxy. He doesn't say much. And when I started working for Lucas, I started working on one of his first films, American Graffiti. So when this one became an opportunity for me, I was told he's not going to say anything. He's going to die. It's not a big deal. But if you want it, and of course, being a starving type artist, I wanted it. So I created Boba Fett, delivered 3 of the costumes. And from there, he became just an incredible icon. And my life has never been the same since I created Boba Fett. Here's an image of me where I did a duplicate helmet of him not that long ago. And I also did it so that it would be auctioned off for Make-A-Wish Foundation. And we made $135,000 on that project. So I really believe that really and truly, we got to keep giving back. So when I met this woman, Nancy Rivard from Airline Ambassadors, and knew that she was really interested as a flight attendant to give back. So when she went in and she landed, she didn't go shopping. She went to the orphanages. She went to places that really made a difference. And from there, she grew a lot of interest from inside the airlines industry. So when we got together, we said, gee whiz, there's something going on out here. And within 3 days, we realized that the airlines had a lot to do with identifying traffickers and trafficking victims. So with that in mind, I was one of the 4 first people, because I had an education background, I had a public background in presenting. We developed the first airline training to get pilots, to get flight attendants, to get airline ticket takers, to get everybody, crew on board to say, hey, we can stop this. We can be a part of this. So with that in mind, here's Airline Ambassadors and what we've been doing. And what we did is we identified what human trafficking was about. And it's really about exploiting others for profit. And it's children, it's women, it's boys. And what we really found out too is it's not only children for abuse, but the biggest market, if you can believe, is labor. And it's the hardest to identify. So as we worked in the airline industry, those are the things we kind of tried to pull together in our training. And right now, even so, we did this, in 2009, we wrote our very first training. But look at how many victims there still are out there. This is the International Labor Organization. They estimate still there's 40 million victims out there. So there's a lot of work to do. It's so under the radar. It's everything we know what to do. The traffickers get one step ahead. And the more you get involved in this, you realize that. So it's something that we have to really wrap our arms around as much as we can. With us, we thought, well, airport training, we went to all the airports, San Francisco, San Jose, LA, Phoenix, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, New York. You know, we just made it our business. Atlanta, every time there was a big sporting event, every time there was an opportunity to go and present, we did that. So we did about 50 of these. And we just went around growing ourselves and growing the organization and making partnerships. So what we did too is we created, like, for example, this little pocket book here thing that to the right, recognize it, report it. I'll have an image of it that you might be able to do, just print a screen of it and maybe print it. But it's just some things that you can think about there. But what we did is we got involved with other transportation facilities. We created a mileage bank for victims. And we created the Blue Heart campaign and went along with DHS with what they were doing. So we created partnerships along the way. some of the government agencies that you might want to consider looking at, and I know Travel Talk Media is still there, and I probably should have taken that off, and I didn't because I have retired my radio program, but we've turned it in for something else. But thecode.org is a wonderful organization. And when we talk about even traveling as women in groups or alone, one of the things we suggest is know where you're going. Go to the code. They talk about the countries. They talk about what the countries have done in these aspects of trafficking awareness. And it's always good, as all of our ladies have presented today, is be aware, do your homework. And that's what we say too when you do travel, is know where you're going, know what you're doing, go with the idea that there are some partnerships around the world that can help you make really good decisions. And then once you're on your way, there are other ways too that you can be of help. Airlines are in a very unique situation. They are right there on the front lines. They are there as responders, and they can go in and call in the people that can really help us. So we decided that if we create a training for them, it could then really circulate and go out. So what we did is we went in, did that, and we realized that not only was it good for the crews, for the pilots, but it was also really good for the travelers. So we do have these kinds of trainings out here. You can look for them on the web, and you can always contact us, and we'll provide you where you can go to get more help, to know what's going on. But one of the reasons too that airline industry is so vital to traffickers is you get somebody and you travel with them, and you just trust that they're doing the right thing. But when they take an individual far from home and it's away from their language, you can pretty much put them in bondage pretty quickly. There's a lot of things that you have to be aware of, but as a flight attendant, they are particularly have an advantage. But as a traveler, you can be careful and ask these same questions with young people that are beside you in a very careful way, of course. But the flight attendants, why are you traveling? You're visiting relatives. You've got a modeling job. Are you an au pair? You can learn of these things, and then the light bulb can go out. As women, I think we have a real direct line to our intuition, more so maybe because we trust it. We've had to rely on our intuition. So these are the kind of things that we have really brought to light. Questions: where will you be staying? Do you know who you're going to be meeting? Are you meeting somebody you know? If these are the kinds of questions that are not going the way they should be, then you have some alternatives to consider. With our training, captains are in a great situation to know what to do. They can call in ahead of time, and that has stopped many. We had one that stopped 186 children that were in bondage. So this program has been hailed. It's grown much further than what I had taken it, of course, with the Airline Ambassadors. I have stepped off after 7 years, thinking that, I've done what I can. And it's a very dark subject. And when you do start training, you realize that people have seen this and they did not know what to do. And there's a part of it that is shameful that we have to help them get beyond, because a lot of times there's tears because they realize these eyes that they looked into were in trouble, but they did not know what to do. They stopped by just saying they couldn't get involved. Well, now there are ways that you can get involved. And I think that with the help of our Department of Homeland Security, there are reporting mechanisms that you can do not only as a anonymous, you can report your name, but if you go out there and you look, you be observant of passengers. I actually had one that happened to me. I was in Chicago. I saw a family I saw a man and a girl. They were sitting at a table. Excuse me. There was no connection of what you could see a family in what they looked like. The appearance was not a family. That doesn't mean anything, by the way. We have blended families all the time. But what you then do is you look a little further. What is the body language? Is there language that is a connection? Is there language that shows that there's interaction? If there's not, there's something just to look at. And I just put my timer on 15 minutes, B, so that I could.
I think you have a couple more minutes.
All right, so I will wrap it up. So, but what I guess I'm getting to is there are ways to go in, and I'm going to go and just quickly go through these things. But as I am going in, I want you to know that these kinds of trainings are available to you. I can get them to you. You can go online and look for them. But it's basically about understanding that the Department of Homeland Security, Human Trafficking, the Resource Center is there. And if you do a print screen of this, that would be highly recommended, and put that somewhere for yourself. Be observant and trust your intuition. This is where I was hoping that you would do a print screen, take this and put this on your computer, and please do take this and share it. This would be wonderful for all of us. Don't confront people. Don't take a picture of somebody. Don't touch anybody. Don't try to rescue anybody. Those are very important, not only for your safety, but more importantly, maybe for the victims. So it's, if you see something, say something. And we're just going to go in and very quickly take you through this so that you have an idea. You can donate, of course. That's my manager. Anyway, there we go. So I'll go back to, I guess, my picture. I don't know if that's possible, but in any case, I just want to thank you all for joining us. I think if I could just say one thing, one final, is that I've taken my music, and which has always been at the core of my heart. I've started playing music when I was 6 years old and never stopped. I've always played on a studio, as a studio musician, as a band, in a band. We are now on Twitch. And our next adventure is we do nonprofit fundraising. We'll be doing one for the Syrian refugee camp in Jordan in April, mid-April. We just did one for St. Jude's Hospital. And we continue to give, because it is true. The more you give, the more you get. And I'm very blessed that way. And I've been blessed to be with you today. Thank you so much, B, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sandy. It's so good to see you again. And you're just such a terrific example, as are all of the women speaking today, of how tourism opens us up to seeing where we can help in the world. And Sandy, that's a big one. And for all of you watching, as mentioned before, all of the information will be on tourismwebinar.com, including speaker profiles. So you'll be able to get in touch with Sandy. And Reza, I think we're still seeing the screen, but it's time to introduce our next speaker, who is one of the Sari sisters I mentioned before. We were in the south of India together in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And she has a tour company, and she's particularly interested in the empowerment of women. In fact, our tour of Southern India was a woman's empowerment tour. So I'd like you all to welcome Deborah Kasen.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Debbie Kasen. I'm originally from India, Calcutta. I have a very unusual background. My father was Indian. My mother was English. She was Jewish. My father was a Hindu. And so we were not brought up in any particular religion. We were taught about spiritualism and how to accept everyone. My father, being a Hindu, as a lot of people understand, that there's a lot of hatred between Muslims and Hindus. But there's one thing my parents taught me was, and including my mother, anybody who knocks at your door, you open that door and you let them into your life because you don't know what you're receiving. My empowerment journey began when I was 18 years old. I never wanted to leave India. I loved India. I loved wearing my saris. And so I said to my parents, and they were horror-stricken, I want an arranged marriage. So they decided, my mother said, okay, I'll go along with this. And she always says, you always have some crazy ideas. I'll go along with you. And she placed an ad in the newspaper. And my father was dead against it because his whole thing was, if a man can smoke, so can a woman. If a man can sleep around, so can a woman. And we're all equal. And that's how he raised us. He never called us daughters. He called us boys. So we were always his boys. And so it's a very interesting story because it really opened my eyes. My mother placed an ad, and the ad read, slender, wheatish complexion, well-educated, convent-educated daughter. So when we went for the first matrimonial meetup, we met with the parents. My father came along begrudgingly. And they were talking, and suddenly the mother turned around and said, oh my God, your daughter is brown. How come she's not white like you? So my mother said, well, look at her father. He's black. He's really black and his complexion is dark. Then they started talking about dowry. And they said, well, my son he has an education. We raised him. We sent him to Australia. We spent so much money on him. He's into computers. So we're looking for so much gold. We're looking for a fridge. We're looking for a car, etc. My father sat there stone-faced. And when they were done, he said, are you done? I said, yes. My father said, you know what? I'll send you an invoice for my daughter. And I'll let you know how much it cost me to raise my daughter for the kind of human being she is. And my father turned around and asked me, do you know your value? And with that, my parents sent me to America when I was about 18 years old, not knowing anything about America. I got into the travel industry, like Zelia said, I needed to make money. So it wasn't really a choice. It was to make money. And I started off as a receptionist, and I worked for different companies. The first company I worked for were for two women. And I watched them and I learned a lot from them. And I do owe them a lot in a positive way and a negative way, because I never wanted to be them. I wanted to be something totally different, because I met up with a friend of mine yesterday and she said, Devika, we women are artists. And I asked her, how come? And Jessica told me, we wear makeup. We dress up beautifully, outwardly. Inwardly, we work spiritually. We're enhancing our souls. And she said, look at you, and I see the trips that you talk about. You are dressing up people in different ways. You're accepting them for who they are, and you're letting them grow the way they need to grow based on what they need. I came into wanting to do women's trips because I felt when I joined Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses, they asked us to pick one niche business topic, how we would grow our business, how we be very unique. So I started doing my research and I found 99% of the people, and Zelia, I understand what you're talking about men and how they control everything. It was the men who were doing the women's tours. And it really irked me to think that they really think we are into only wellness and shopping. That's all we're about, is that they are our ATM machine, that we punch the numbers and the money comes out. And it made me very angry. So I decided I have something between my ears, and it's called intelligence. And how much of that intelligence do we use? And how do we empower ourselves? And what is women's empowerment? So I took a break and I sat back and I thought to myself, what is a woman? Am I a woman because my mother had an ovary? Did I become a woman when my father impregnated my mother? Or did I become a woman once I was formed in my mother's uterus as a female? Or am I really a woman as I'm progressing and going through the various transition a woman goes through in life? So those were the questions that were coming to me. So I decided I have to understand society, tradition, and our finances, because finances does govern a woman. So I sat down and I thought, let me work with India first, because that's where I am from. As I was studying about women in India, what really shocked me and what stuns me is that women today in India are a far cry of what we used to be. The real Indians in India were the Dravidians. They lived in the northern part of India. But because of the Aryan invasions, they were pushed down to the southern part of India. And the Indians were very much into education. They were into women empowerment, and they believed in a free society. But because we had the Aryans, they started creating the caste system. When they created the caste system, they created a structure. So you had the priest class, you had the merchant class, and then so on and so forth. There was a lot of intermarriage, but then because the priests felt they couldn't control the society and women were given a lot of power, because you had women priestesses, women were doctors, they were educated. If they wanted to marry, they could. If they wanted to have children out of wedlock, they could. And there were female warriors. So all of that changed because the priests, including the Muslims, when they came to India, they changed the whole structure of what a woman should be. So I said, I'm going to do Southern India, because that's where empowerment starts. And that's where we need to begin our journey. Then when I was going to do my trip, it was about 2 or 3 days before the trip, I saw a program where I saw 2 men talking about transitioning into becoming a woman. Are you a woman because you were born a woman? Or are you a woman because you're also transitioning from a man to a woman? What is that transition? And in India, when a man is going through that transition into a woman, you have to understand they're endangering their lives. And the reason being is that men are considered wealth to the family, because when a man grows older and he has his education, parents invest in them and they make them the sole breadwinner of the family. So he not only takes care of his parents, he gets married, he has a wife, and he has children. And so he becomes a commodity for his parents. When a man in India decides to become a woman, he is not only ostracized, but it's called honor killing. A lot of these transvestites are murdered by their family because they are dishonoring the code of what it means to be a man. And then I decided, how does our society, our tradition, and our religion play into all of this? And I found that when and we will understand, because when we went to a place called Alapi, there were these group of women where they were very dependent on their husbands, but they created a group, just women, young Christian ladies, where they were trying to keep their neighborhood clean, where they were trying to empower women, to give them jobs, to give them something to do. And I thought that was very, very interesting, how we empower ourselves. And I feel that when we empower ourselves, we have to remember what's good for me is not good for you. So it's not a one size fits all. Empowerment is different for everyone. There's a different formula for each of us. Down south also, there is a place, a temple, a snake temple. And you remember we went there. I was very appalled because you have all these women, they're married, they haven't had children in 6 years, they come, they pray. And some of them came with their twins, triplets, or a son after 8 years, 10 years of marriage. And I was very critical about them. And I thought to myself, you having a child, does that make you a woman? For them, yes, not for me. And so we have to honor that part of a woman. When I went to South Korea, I met a nun. And she decided to become a Buddhist nun because she wanted to get away from being married and having her husband tell her what to do, what not to do. The interesting part is in the Buddhist religion in South Korea, they are governed by the men and by the male monks, and they are told what to do. But in her own world, what she has created, and you must have watched her on Chef's Table, she started cooking, and she's very famous now for the meals that she presents. But what the beauty of her meals that I like is that her relationship with the foods that she puts on the table, the way she presents the food, her relationship with the food, and her relationship with Mother Earth, where she gets it from. So she takes herself away from the men. She doesn't get involved in those decisions, but she's created her own world where men don't become involved in that particular area of what she does. In Japan, what I did was I realized that it's a society definitely governed by men, but women are now coming out. The left women who are thinking of marriage and children, they are now thinking of a career. And the government is getting a little worried about that. And I talked to a lady, a Japanese lady, and we were talking about Ikebana. And she said, when you look at Ikebana, you're looking at a woman and you're seeing her beauty and you're looking at the creation. And a woman is a creation in herself, the different things that we do. And when you look at the stems and the thorns, those are the different facets of a woman that you're looking at. So the flower arrangement is an encompassment of a woman's strength. If you push her in a corner, she has these thorns and she can hurt you. But yet she's so fragile. She's like the petals that can fall off, and she smells beautiful, but don't be fooled by what you see. And for me, I think my journey as a woman and what I'm going through currently is I've been empowered. Having been in a relationship and marriage for 23 years, I'm now coming into my own. I'm having a voice. I'm saying, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to take my tour. So it's come to a point where, do I stay or do I leave? And my answer is, I'm going to leave because I have to do what I need to do. If I'm going to do women's tours, I first have to know who I am, where I want to go, and how I want to empower everybody around me once I am empowered. So that understanding has to be there. And I think it's an art form, as my friend said. We are a work of art and we are constantly changing. B, thank you very much for this platform. I don't know if it's 15 minutes or not, but that's all I have to say. Thank you.
And as you can tell, everyone who's listening, that it was a very, very enriching experience to travel with Deborah Kasen through the south of India, because we had these sorts of stories and sharing every day. And the Sari sisters will be supportive of each other forever as a result. And we're all at different stages of our personal transformation. So I know you make incredible tours, and I wish you every success with your transformation forward in this industry. Thank you, Deborah. And our next speaker, our last speaker, but as they say, not least, I also met through an International Institute through Peace Through Tourism seminar, this time in Johannesburg. And she was a young whippersnapper, and she still is, but her goal was to visit every single country in the world and for peace through tourism. And she did it. She has beat that she's wins, I think, 2 Guinness World Records on this particular journey. And she writes about it and she talks about it. And we have the pleasure of having her with us today. Let's welcome Cassie de Bacall.
Thank you so much, B, for the introduction. And I'm so happy to be here. You know, IIPT and Louis D'Amour, I mean, they've helped me so much through the beginning stages of my expedition. I mean, he was such a great support and mentor for me as I took off on my travels to every country in the world. So I'm so happy to be here and to be part of Women's Voices in Tourism. And yeah, just a little bit of background. So it took me 1.5 years to plan my entire expedition around the world. I had to find the sponsors, the supporters, the endorsements, the visas, everything to plan a trip to every country involves a lot of planning, but I also had a mission to promote positive peace through economics and responsible tourism as well, following the Global Peace Index, speaking to university students and dignitaries around the world on what responsible tourism is, as well as planting trees to offset my carbon footprint and kind of educate them on sustainable tourism in that way as well. But also being a woman traveling solo to every country in the world, of course, it had its challenges. You know, family and friends, you know, people would say the risk of you traveling solo to every country, there's just too many of them, and it's probably best for you to reconsider. But it's something that I just wanted to really push through. And since I was a kid, I just wanted to prove that, you know, these countries around the world that we would always see so much negativity on in the media weren't necessarily as bad as in actuality in real life. And I had no idea. I hadn't, you know, I grew up, I didn't really travel much growing up. My mom's from Canada, so we'd pretty much only been to Canada until I turned 18. And once I got the opportunity to travel, I just took off, and have been doing so the past decade. But there were a lot of countries around the world, specifically the Middle Eastern region, that I was so fascinated with traveling to. And so when I got the opportunity to do so, I thought, how can I show the world that it's not as bad of a place as what the media depicts it to be, but also traveling solo as a woman. I mean, in America specifically, we're kind of instilled this fear for solo female travelers. We see these negative articles on what happens to women, and it just happens to be one article, but there's so many women that are traveling solo and that are able to do so safely. And so that's something that I was really passionate about doing and showing around the world to the university students I spoke to the high school students I spoke with, a lot of women's groups that I spoke to try and encourage them to pursue their passions and travel and not have that fear, and take kind of steps and precautions in order to avoid potential issues that could arise traveling solo as a woman. During my expedition, I was sponsored by a company called Spot Satellite GPS. So I like to talk about traveling with a satellite GPS that has, you know, an SOS option, but also it alerts your family when you arrive in a new country. And that was very helpful for my parents. They were able to see that I was safe whenever I arrived in a country that was a little bit challenging to get to, but also perhaps a little bit dangerous as well. I also practiced Krav Maga, and that, you know, I got up to level 2, but it was enough to give me the confidence knowing that should something happen to me, I could defend myself, or at least have the confidence to be able to try. And then, of course, just basic things like not going out to bars alone as a woman, having your wits about you, not looking lost when you're in public places, and just ensuring that a family member and or a friend knows where you are at all times is really important. But beyond the safety aspect, I just really wanted to give women the courage and the inspiration to around the world to know that they could travel. I mean, a lot of these speaking engagements and keynote sessions, when I spoke to university students and high school students, women and young girls didn't feel that they had the opportunity to travel at all. They didn't feel that they could even step outside their own town. They just didn't know that they even had the opportunity to do so. I mean, all of us have traveled a lot. And so we kind of recognize that opportunity that we have as women to travel, but so many women around the world don't realize and recognize that they have that opportunity just to even dream about it. And so that was a huge passion of mine, was to encourage them to keep dreaming and planning their travels if they want to go somewhere, and thinking about it and almost manifesting it, but also showing them that they too can travel the world, and kind of being a source of inspiration was really important to me. So I started a nonprofit organization called Her International that funds female-driven and supports female-driven businesses around the world that address one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And so the purpose of that is to really build this up so that women around the world have an opportunity to pursue their passions in business and in travel, and make a positive change and enhance the world we live in through the UN SDGs. And so it's constant work in progress. And I'm grateful to be here today and to have had the opportunity to inspire women around the world. And we met so long ago. And I mean, look at how far we've all come today from that first symposium back in 2014, right? So I'm so grateful to all of the people who have kind of been involved in helping me achieve my mission of traveling to every country in the world. The 2 records I broke were for the fastest person to travel every country and fastest female to travel every country in the world. Since those records have been broken back in 2017, there's a lot of women that have been going after it. And actually there was one woman who did break those records. So I'm like beyond thrilled to see that women are just like taking charge and going and traveling the world. And I do feel a little bit of responsibility in case something bad does happen, but I'm confident that women are watching out for themselves and enjoying the ride and seeing the kindness and beauty that the world has to offer for them. So thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate it.
I like seeing it that way too. That's so positive. You have such a positive attitude towards it all. And it's cute that your background, you conquered all the countries of the world. What's next? The galaxy?
I know, right? Yeah, well, I mean, I did get accepted to travel to space with Virgin Galactic a few years ago when they do take off with that first passenger plane to space, but who knows? I mean, I just love this background though. It's speaks wonders.
I also love the fact that you did this with the blessings of IIPT. And tell us about your experiences as you arrived in the different countries with that flag flying.
Yeah, IIPT and carrying the credo of the peaceful traveler and being able to deliver that to dignitaries around the world, from Libya to even North Korea to all of these countries. And it just signified so much peace. I mean, despite any, cultural differences or religious differences, I mean, it just really brought us together, IIPT and the credo, and just traveling. I mean, from when I left as a 25-year-old to when I finished as a 27-year-old, I just grew so immensely and matured so much through representing IIPT and meeting with dignitaries and just connecting over peace through tourism, really. And it's just, there's so much to connect around the world. Peace is just such a general thing that we can all just have respect and kindness towards one another. So yeah, I was very, very grateful to be traveling through IIPT.
Well, you certainly had their support. And there's a few of us on here in the participants that are members of IIPT, and I see Ajay Prakash is here, so welcome. And Louis D'Amour, the president, is here. So, and as I was saying before, the empowerment of women, the success of women in tourism is all under the umbrella of the concept of peace through tourism. And including myself, we've heard 7 of the women's voices. And I think we can see that every single one of us is leading things onwards and upwards and in the direction of peace, in the direction of improved economies. So I'm very happy to be part of this as well. We have a few minutes left. And I was just thinking it just might be interesting to address the speakers in general, just about the influence of current events on our tourism life going forward. It just seems that tourism is always in a state of crisis management. And it just seems we have, quite a few things coming at us from everywhere. And I wonder if anybody would like to remark on that, just the influence of the pandemic. How has this stopped your progress? Or how has the Me Too movement helped? I wonder if anyone would like to address that.
I would like to.
Okay, Sandy.
Thank you, Bea. You know what has happened to us, of course, is it's a complete stoppage of travel. And when you think about countries like Jordan, who I work very closely with, all they have is tourism. They don't have oil. They have some mud, they have salt, which are wonderful minerals. So what we did is you have to think outside the box. We created the largest peace sign out of people that floated on the Dead Sea, the longest slip and slide, and we created film locations that we took myself and other people to, because Jordan is a huge film location destination as far as Disney, Star Wars, Lawrence of Arabia, just a ton of them, The Martian. So I think really what I realize for us is you just have to think completely outside the box when you are doing this. And it's really quite fun.
Now I have to unmute myself. Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else have some ideas, any perspectives on going forward in their area?
I think it will bounce back so quickly. I think people have short memories, and I don't think the 1918 flu really changed too much about the way we travel. And I do think, though, that people will be so much more aware of medical safety, and I think it's a good thing going forward. I think that is a silver lining. I think people will take more care about themselves. So hopefully that's a good thing.
I have a feeling other things are going to stay around. For example, mask wearing. I've actually seen that for the last 20 years, more in countries where they had the problems and decided that wearing a mask was the best protection. So there will be changes. It'll be interesting to see which ones they are.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we wrap up?
You know, I also want to add that COVID has made us introspective. It's as if God has said, stand still and take a look at yourself. Take stock of what you're doing and what is it that you need to do. And I think what it made me do is made me get to know myself. What is my identity? Before I come to you, say, you need to come on my trip. Who am I? Where am I going? What do I need to do? And I think what's going to happen now with COVID is there's a surgence of women coming out saying, we have a voice, we are a tribe, and we are very powerful. Don't misunderstand us. And I think it's going to be, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but we're going to be ruling very soon. You'll see less of men and more of women having a voice and saying in which direction should be going. Because look at America, we have our first female vice president. What a breakthrough.
Yes, it is exciting. There are exciting days ahead. Well, I would like to thank all of our wonderful speakers at today's seminar. And this is about the issues and the problems. And I think some of us could join the solutions session later on in May. But Zelia Breda, Paragudov, Ronnie Buccanee, Sandy Doivetter, Kasen, and Cassie DePacol. This has been fascinating. And for all of you who would like to see it again or who haven't seen it yet, all of this has been recorded and is available on tourismwebinar.com. And not only these, but some of the past seminars, which all have been groundbreaking, or as one gentleman pointed out here, eye-popping as the other. Also, if you want information on International Institute of Peace through Tourism, that website is www.iipt.org. So, another seminar done, and I think it's been a very forward-moving one. It's been a delight for me to see you all or meet you, and thank you so much for joining us. And also, finally, thank you, Reza Soltani, for putting all of this together.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bea. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Wonderful to hear all of you, and hope
That's
we
great,
can all
yeah.
keep in touch.
I just wanted to say a few words, if there is 30 seconds. I am just an occasional traveler, and I thoroughly enjoyed this webinar. For the first time I attended, it opened up a whole lot of information and education for me. Wonderfully done, excellently moderated. All speakers were excellent in their field, and I learned so much. Thank you very much.